welcome all viewers to the second edition of our vlog. And today we have got another interesting personality here for you. His name is Dr. Sarvesh Kulkarni. Sarvesh is a graduate from the University of Mumbai in computer engineering. He later on went to complete his MS and his PhD from the University of Texas at Dallas in computer engineering again. He is now an associate professor with Villanova University in the Department of Electronics and Computer Engineering, and has extensive experience in teaching graduate courses, undergraduate courses, uh, online courses for the university, as well as doing a lot of seminal research in various related topics along with the industry. So Sarvesh is here today to answer a few questions about the pedagogy, about the way teaching happens, and about the way learning happens, and what kind of mediums are prevalent across the world today, or especially in the United States today. So welcome Sarvesh, and welcome to this vlog.
Thank you.
So, Sarvesh, we were speaking a few days ago, and you were mentioning that one of the things which is extremely important from the U.S. industry perspective or the U.S. educational perspective is this thing about continuing education, where people are expected to keep on learning for as simple a thing as being able to maintain their licenses to operate the kind of employment that they're doing or the businesses that they're doing. What kind of education do these people want more and more? I'm not talking about technical or non-technical. I'm speaking more from a perspective of how do they educate themselves? What is the medium which they choose primarily to get this ongoing education?
So as you've rightly pointed out, a lot of professions that have licensing requirements, such as nursing, medicine, law, engineering, also actuarial services in insurance industry and things like that. They require all the members. And by the way, my daughter's kindergarten teacher, all the way from kindergarten to 12th grade teachers also are required to maintain their teaching licenses. Right? So they are required to actually maintain or take continuing education credits, as they call them, to maintain the licenses and relevancy in their profession. That's a professional requirement. And the way you do that is by taking either courses through a local college or university, traditional courses, or short seminars that are recognized as providing continuing education for your further growth in your field, and also through workshops and conferences. So there are a variety of ways in which you can maintain, your currency with your discipline, and it's required, it's expected. And even if you are not part of a licensed profession, it is also understood to stay relevant in the field. Most employers will expect their employees to show some kind of professional development, either on their own or through some kind of formal education that takes place over their career. Did I answer that question? Or?
Yeah, partially yes. So the other part of this was something which I have personally or even Kanchan has personally faced. So guys, also welcome Kanchan here on this. Kanchan is my business partner, also my life partner, and so she is here to ask a few questions to Sarvesh as well a little later. So coming back, Sarvesh, I was wondering, because both of us have gone through that. It becomes more and more difficult as one goes along and one gets more and more entrenched into your particular profession or your employment to really take time off the employment and do a course again. For example, Kanchan had to take 2 years off to do her MBA after she had started working already. And not everybody really is in a position to do that. So how is this particular issue addressed primarily?
So interestingly enough, it all depends on what kind of job you're doing and what the employer's facility is to facilitate your own personal development as well as career development that benefits the employer. So for example, some corporate employers will actually allow you to take university style courses either for a master's credit or taking a few courses in a certain concentration, as we call it, to enhance your skills in an area. or one-off courses that you can take through universities. That's the traditional way in which you would do things,
Okay.
by going to the university and taking courses one-off or as a collection of courses, part of a degree or certificate. The other ways is by allowing you to take certain courses that are online through webinars, through your professional development organizations. And nowadays also many universities also, like including mine, offer courses that are online as well. So you get a chance to have a variety of, uh, that there is a considerable amount of choice that you can have, depending on how much time and how much, um, what kind of resources you have in terms of time and money. So for example, for a large corporate company, for a large corporate employer, it is not uncommon for them to, one of the benefits that they give to their employees is that they say, we will pay for your master's education or something of the sort. And the employee is required to apply for those grants every semester, demonstrate that they get a course of something, a grade of something like B or better in graduate course, for example, and will be reimbursed at the end of the semester. So there is some skin in the game, both for the employee as well as the employer.
Hmm.
Uh, that sort of works out for the benefit of both parties.
Okay, so you were talking about some people going in for the traditional way of getting education, and some people going on to the online the medium as well. Uh, having taught both these courses, do you
Mhm.
find any kind of do you feel that one of them is better than the other in some ways? So a lot of people believe that there is really no alternative to taking face-to-face classroom kind of courses. Online courses are not equally good enough or lack certain facilities. So what, since I believe you have been taking online courses for the last 20 years or so. What's your opinion about it?
Yeah, so I think I've been teaching online courses for about 12, 13 years. My institution has been offering them more than that, longer than that.
Okay.
Now, I must preface everything I say now by saying that these views belong to me and not to my institution. Right? I mean, classic disclaimer. Having
Okay.
said that, um, the way we offer online courses is slightly different from, it's not an online only experience. So for example, I would be teaching in a class, and there would be in-class full-time students who are taking the class. And at the same time, there's an operator in the room, or there is a video camera, the document cameras, or whatever you need in the room that's also broadcasting the class live to anywhere, or all of our students anywhere in the country. Now, having said that, to get to the point of your question, where is what's the difference in the modes of teaching, or what are the special challenges? And anybody will tell you that I've been doing this for many years. I'm very comfortable speaking extempore in public. That's a necessary skill you need to have if you're going to speak it in front of class day in and day out. So the one thing I do realize is any good orator or instructor learns to read the body language and the facial expressions of her or his students.
Yes.
Based on that, you can tell whether a part of the class is not following what you're saying, or are all of them following, and the classic rules apply. 10% of the class will probably never fall into anything you do. Right?
Well,
But if you see
that's a
majority of,
universal trend.
or because partly because of, I'm not saying they're unintelligent, some of them are simply not motivated or as interested as the rest as they
Interested.
could be.
Correct. Correct.
But you learn to understand who, if you can see most of your classes following along, if they're following along but just barely, you learn to slow down, you learn to speed up if you're boring them. Those kinds of instant feedback mechanisms are not available for online courses, right? I mean, anytime there's somebody sitting at the other end of the camera, you can't really peer into your screen and see what they're doing. So it requires a lot of preparation in upfront to address that. And one of the things you could do upfront is, for example, assign them home reading so that they come to your class with some basic understanding of what's going to be taught. And this way you can maintain your current pace. So as long as they do their end of the work, you can be assured that they have at least a certain baseline that they're following, right? And so you can consistently move fast along. Failing that, you would have to slow down considerably just to be sure that everybody is keeping up with you. The other things I also notice is you have to use a lot more examples. And this has been shown in a lot of literature way back from the early 1900s, the way people learn.
Okay.
NRC in the US has published a lot of that literature, how people learn, right? And how students learn. And one of the things they say is they learn through um, relating things that they are learning to what they already know in their life. So you have to be able to create relevant examples to show them that they can already relate to. The second part is experiential learning, where you experience certain things you're doing. Now, that's not relevant for online stuff because you need to have hands-on things that you're doing. So short of that, you would have to use substitute something like a lot of animations that sort of simulate or emulate the experiential learning part.
Right.
Requires a lot of work up front. So to show animations in your slides or animations of diagrams and things like that. So there are, so it requires, unlike what most people think, it's not easy just speaking in front of a camera. It requires a lot of background activity, a lot of extra effort. So for example, if I'm teaching a class, I would say in a traditional in-class setting, for every hour I teach, I need about 4 hours of lecture preparation, initially at least, to get my material in order so I can deliver the information in a very concise fashion. Now, of course, subsequently, when I do the same delivery, it's a lot easier. Maybe I need to do 1 hour of prep for every 1 hour I deliver. For online stuff, animations and things you need to do, special examples you need to create, I would say it's easily 50% extra time.
Wow.
So it's a lot more effort.
It's a lot more than that.
So from a perspective of an instructor, it's much harder. But from the perspective of a student, it's interesting because we also find a lot of researchers telling us that most students don't actually, and I'm talking of students loosely, regardless of whether they're very novice learners, as we call them in first year and second year of their degree courses, or advanced learners who have gone through this process before. So people much more advanced in their along their educational qualifications. It doesn't matter what you are, who you are. Small modules usually work better, something like 20 to 50 minutes at the most. Well, most people will not complete anything more than 13 minutes of modules easily at one sitting.
Okay.
So modular learning is good. Secondly, breaking down everything into modules means you can actually listen to anything on the subway, on the train, in small installments, and you can have logical breaks in between them. Then one installment ends and the other one starts. And from a student's perspective, that is useful because they can fit in these learning sessions in between the other things that they're doing in their already busy lives.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, one is the connection between the faculty and the listener as a student, and another is in a real life classroom, the bonding between different students. So, does technology, I mean, can it take care of the student bonding in terms of group activities or, learning together?
So that's a good question because really the human feedback is also very important when you do the learning aspect, and some of it is lost when you do an online video thing, right? So, but tools are coming online that can address that. For example, a lot of the learning management tools actually have breakout session rooms in which you can classify a group of students as or learners as a group and have them have their own discussions, and you can ask them to report back to you after you're done. So virtual breakout rooms are now possible through lots of these software facilities. The other thing, of course, is that the direct asking of questions is also an interesting problem, right? I mean, normally somebody who is taking a course in real time or listening to a talk in real time wants to interrupt you right away and ask you a question in the middle of a class because then it clarifies the rest of it. This is also doable, by the way. So many of the times there is sometimes a way for somebody to raise a hand virtually so it pops up on your screen. And then you can stop and say, okay, what is it that you want to ask? And you can answer the question right there. So I think the software isn't 100% there yet, but it's coming there close to a real experience very quickly. I mean, people are realizing these things. In fact, I think because of this whole coronavirus situation, a lot of the people who have been supplying to universities, enterprise level software are starting to put these features in very quickly. And I would see that they will accelerate these features over the next few years. So you can certainly get that interaction that you want interestingly enough. But
Thanks.
there are
I
other things
think
you can
this
also.
is.
Turning back to your previous answer, of course, this answer was extremely well articulated. But going back to your previous answer, it seemed like a chore, preparing 50% more for the online students and doing animations and so on and so forth. But also, I'm sure very rewarding, especially now that you mentioned that there are so many new technological advances where you have breakout rooms and raising a hand and so on and so forth. However,
Right.
one question I would still want to ask you is why would if it's easy to reach to reach a classroom, why should a corporate, my company for example, why should I ask my employees to take any online courses at all? I mean, I stay in a city, there's a university in the city. Why should I ask them to take any online courses at all? What's in it for me, or what's in it for my employee?
So you have to also understand that nothing is instant, right? So for example, let's suppose you have an employee who needs to take a course, and the local university or the college, wherever you're taking that course, is a half an hour walk or a drive or whatever, right? So you have to now count for the extra time to go there, be on site. There is always an uptime and downtime. You can't be there right when the class starts. You have to be there ahead of time. You might leave a little later.
Sure.
There is traffic to contend with. And as soon as you get back, I don't know about you, but even in the US, which is much more pleasant, even in the summer, you can't really just switch off your mind and go back to work as soon as you're back. It takes about 10-15 minutes of downtime. All in all, you might see at least an hour, hour and a half that you lose in the commute and the recovery process itself. But this is just if you're going to a local university. If you had to go somewhere else, then that would be a lot more expensive. You would have to kind of arrange for flights. Of lots of people here go for conferences and all, and there are flights to take and there are hotels to book, and cost can add up.
Okay.
So that's one of the biggest things. The second advantage, of course, is that because you're now doing this online, there's a facility to record all these courses,
Oh, okay.
and which we do. So essentially, the entire course, as it's delivered and the interaction can be recorded. And whoever's taking that course, the students in the class, whoever they may be, have the facility to play back these recordings again and again if they want to take a look to see the point that they have missed. In a class session, of course, the other advantage, you can see where I'm going with this. We have all sat in a class where we zoned out in about 15 minutes because we were thinking of something else. Life happens, right? In the middle of a class. We're thinking about how the day went wrong in the morning.
I think we have done that together as well, Sarvesh, most of the times.
Right. And I know with Mahesh because we used to sit on the last bench possibly and we missed out quite a few.
So I was going to ask you, what happens to the last benches? I mean, the back benches, the era of back benches, is that over with online education now?
So here's interesting. I have a theory behind it. The back benches are the most intelligent because they take in so little and yet they do so much. No, just But going back to where we were, so essentially, if you do miss a few things in a traditional classroom setting, you have lost the rest of the class because you can't pick up your train of thought unless the whole class is modular.
Correct.
Whereas here, you can just pause the recording, go back, or time shift it, go back, and then do it all over again. So there are certain advantages. There are disadvantages, no doubt, but there are also certain advantages. So I wouldn't look at an online education as to see how. Well, let me rephrase that. I would look at an online experience as a rethinking of the experience, and we're probably not using it to the full potential that we are using it. So it's
Okay.
a lot important to understand what the kind of courses we're delivering, the way in which we're delivering, and possibly change the mode of delivery to take advantage of whatever you have right there.
Wonderful. So essentially, I think what you're saying is, as an employer, or if, as an employer especially, I think the benefits for me accrue in the economics in terms of not spending on travel and stay and all those kinds of things, and as also in terms of really having a quality education in terms of the recording. So doing them again and again, and not missing out any bit at all, etc. I also, while I was speaking to while I was listening to this, I also realized that since you were saying it's just classroom, I know it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour and a half kind of thing. Another advantage I saw was I don't need to pull my people out of the field or out of their line for days together. So is it possible to just kind of do it maybe 2 hours in the evening or 2 hours in the morning or some? I'm sure that's quite possible, isn't it?
So interestingly enough, most American universities recognize that a large percentage of our grad population usually tends to be people who are working,
Hmm, hmm.
people who are working engineers. So from the local maybe yeah, people who work in the defense industry, people who work with the government. They have families to support. You can't just go to school full time. And most of the courses are run at night times at around after 6 p.m., 6 to 9. So 1 day a week or 2 days a week, something like that. Most
Right.
universities do that. But the problem, of course, is that those are regularly scheduled courses. They're very synchronous in nature, right? So what that means, of course, is if you have a project as an employer, if you have a project and deadlines are now looming large, it is kind of hard to ask your engineers to go take that course when there's a deadline 2 days from now on, and now the team is right here, assembled. Would you want anybody to leave at that point? So the convenience aspect cannot be overlooked, that if it's online, you can time shift it, right? I mean, this is really, very useful. And again, when you time shift it and you record it, even if it's a 3 hour straight session, you can break it down in half an hour listening sessions whenever you get a
Right.
chance.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that's brilliant. That's really brilliant, especially for slow learners like me. That's a boon.
Yeah. I wouldn't classify him as a slow learner, Kanchan. So I think he just didn't want to learn. That's kidding. No, no. I mean, he was pretty good at what he did, right? So you short sell yourself.
She doesn't believe me, but anyway. So, no, do you want to ask something?
No, no, no. Please go ahead.
So Sarvesh, there's one thing which really is interesting to all of us out here in India, and that is essentially that symbiotic relationship between the industry and universities in the US, and a lot of us out here believe that the entire advantage, the technology advantage, the innovation advantage which the US has is primarily because of this symbiotic relationship between their learning centers and their implementation centers. Uh, I would really love to have some comments from you about that. And since you have studied here and are now teaching there, what kind of a gulf do you think we need to cross?
Yes, please.
So this is multidimensional, right? I mean, the relationship, because the relationship between American universities and industry and the government is kind of very unusual. I mean, I've gone to conferences, talked to people in Europe and Asia, and they're getting there, but this is quite unique America-wise. So what then happens is um, industry is involved in most good universities. I mean, universities that are accredited. I mean, industry is involved in part of our not just research but also in teaching. And the way it works is most departments. I can only speak to engineering departments, of course, so I'll qualify that. So engineering departments usually have advisory boards. An advisory board is constituted by taking in representatives from your alumni list, industry, local industry, other graduate schools who you might send your students to. Remember, the advisory board's job is to tell us what we are doing right, what we are doing wrong, how to self-correct,
Great.
because they are stakeholders. We send our students to grad schools, so some faculty from other schools might be on our boards. We send people out to industry, so the people from all levels of industry are generally on advisory board, from entry-level engineers to mid-level managers to CEOs and above. Sometimes large companies sit on our advisory board, and they look at our curriculum. And by the way, our accreditation body ABAC requires us to involve all stakeholders in reviewing our curriculum.
Oh,
So we take their input. They look at the curriculum. If they have any good inputs that we might, if you have a blind spot, they will alert us to the blind spot. So it's always a balancing act. Now, let me not give you the impression that they tell us and we do it. Now, the engineering faculty have a lot of control in the US about the curriculum that they set. And just not the engineering faculty, all faculty in all departments in the university will have complete control of their own curriculum. So the faculty always debates whether how much of the information that we give or knowledge that we impart to the students is foundational, because that is the life skill. And how much should we give them as specific skills that will make them instantly employable, right? So through a variety of projects, coursework, and internships, we make all that available. Industry will actually hire our students for internships. They come to us sometimes. Sometimes they will pay universities to send them students there, or pay for projects that will be executed inside the university, within the university, but that are staffed by students. So there is this interaction. So the advantage then is when a student graduates, they are going into a marketplace that is, and knowledge is all current, right? So they have a ready source of good supply of manpower. Now you go beyond that and at the master's and the PhD level. So you have to understand large American universities, large and medium-sized universities that are not primarily geared towards teaching. There are teaching geared universities as well, but many universities are not like that. I mean, the big names you can imagine. And a large amount of research dollars are not in, well, first of all, very few research dollars are generated internally by a university.
Okay.
They come from outside. And where do they come from? From the government through its funding arms, the Department of Defense, that supports classified as well as non-classified research. Then the National Science Foundation that supports foundational research in universities in all in STEM fields usually. The National Institutes of Health that support development of vaccines and such in medical schools and other and devices for diagnosis and stuff like that. And a large portion also comes from industry. Okay. And the reason it works is because you have to think about an industry in a cutting edge field, and most industries are, unless they're doing contract labor, you usually are in a cutting edge field. They are developing products, they're developing services for their customers. If you are heading an institution such as this and you come across a technical problem you cannot solve at the moment, you have two choices. Go out and look for the right people, which might be impossible because the manpower you're looking for necessarily for somebody with expertise in a very narrow range. Then you might need to have to spend money to develop a lab and then staff it, and then you know regulatory approvals, and this is very expensive stuff. But on the other hand, you can go to a local university which has subject matter experts in every field you can think of, right? Right. And to give in almost all American universities, full-time faculty are almost exclusively have the highest degrees in the field, the terminal degrees in the field, which is a PhD. Wow. So very few people without those things. So you're subject matter experts. So you can go to them and basically say, okay, if you can solve this problem for me, or they can invite the faculty to submit proposals in an area that they are interested in. And the agreement is if for X amount of dollars, you can solve this problem for me in an Y amount of time. So then it is the faculty members' responsibility to put together a team that's going to do that, hire the right students. So now the faculty member goes from writing grant proposals to being a manager, hiring manager, hiring the grad students, the other postdoc members and whatnot, to then managing the project itself. Then you become a supervisor when the research gets underway, to a reporter who then creates the reports and reports on the milestones. And you can see that you outsource most of the headache to somebody who's doing this for a living. Absolutely. And what comes out of that, as long as intellectual property agreements are in place, is the faculty member then gets a chance to write up the research, get publications, increases the visibility of the university, and creates, very importantly, an extremely talented and trained pool of students who are now going to graduate with a master's and a PhD and now join these companies, right? So you're looking at the symbiotic relationship, and everybody benefits. The company benefits by solving a problem in very short time, getting a talent pool to recruit from. The grad students get a benefit because now I'm paying, for example, I would be paying their graduate tuition and the stipend to work on the project. The professors, faculty members benefit because they are getting, number one, little known fact is American universities do not pay you in the summertime unless you teach or you conduct research. So you can pay your own salary in the summer, right? And also publish.
Correct.
And the university profile also is that much better because of the publications. And of course, the university indirectly benefits because you are now paying for the upkeep of the labs and stuff like that. So you can see this kind of is a very interesting relationship. And also, the biggest advantage to all of this is for a company is that they really get stuff for cheap and very fast. The research output. Um, and this is an accepted way in which you do that. I've personally done that for quite a few. I've done that for. So I've personally had grants from the U.S. government. I've had grants from the local industry. I've had grants from the state government. So state government, by the way, little known fact is, which you don't realize in India, is that, for example, the city of Philadelphia or the state government can come and say, we have this problem where we have flooding in this area. We have water runoff. They might go to the civil engineering department and to find out novel ways of solving a problem, not necessarily simply solve a problem, but how can we solve a problem? What's the best way to solve a problem? Wow. So similar thing with energy usage, right? They might go to university and say, this is our energy usage that profile, and what's the best mix of energy usage that we could have that would actually create the least pollution, create enough jobs, and so on and so forth. So you could have a lot of university involvement in areas that faculty members already work in.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So, Sarvesh, this was a very interesting conversation. Got to know a lot about the way the US universities operate, the kind of the models of teaching which you are now following, and which are more attuned towards the industry needs of basically saving on economics, on financials, saving on getting some facilities out of it, all that. So very, very interesting conversation with you. And
may I just ask one last question here? This being the Brave New World series, and a question which has really been creating a lot of curiosity for me. Post COVID-19 world, what are the biggest opportunities and challenges you see in the learning world, be it education wise or professional training, both ways?
So if I look at the way universities are proceeding, right? I mean, universities have dabbled quite a bit in online education even before the COVID world. So we have been doing this since mid 2000s, right? Online classrooms. And today, in certain engineering fields, most of our class may be online. Sometimes we have very few students, full-time students sitting in class, and most of them are joining us from California and Virginia, constituencies that we would never have gotten in a Pennsylvania university, right? So that's possible. Other universities like MIT have actually dabbled with the MOOC model, the massively online course model, where they deliver online courses. Khan University is another example for that, right? I mean, he does a fantastic job. So that's another way of doing it. So nobody has really. So here's the thing: for the MOOC model, the revenues are kind of not there. I mean, I'm not very clear as to what the revenues could be, because you're open sourcing your course content, but unless you register for a course, you cannot have feedback, because if you have 10,000 students taking a course, you cannot possibly give you feedback. And one of the most important things in the learning environment is the feedback to the learner. Right?
Correct.
That's the reason you have assignments. That's the reason you have exams. And exams are de-emphasized quite a bit in American education system. And yet, I mean, I have exams in my classes. They form about 40 to 50% of the grade. But most of the grade is constant homeworks and labs and reports and things like that keep you moving on. And that requires manpower, right? And manpower. So if you don't have a faculty member or a teaching assistant who's sitting there and grading all these reports, the feedback loop doesn't exist. And so that the MOOC model is probably not the best way in which you do what shall I say, very focused learning. I mean, it's good for people to pick up their skills, but I would say a virtual classroom setting is probably what you need there. But then that requires cost, right? Yeah. So what we are seeing is, because you have to pay the instructor, you have to pay the support staff, you have to pay for the licenses, right? of all the software, and you have to pay for your systems that you might be doing a lot of work in the background. So we are seeing what I'm seeing, what I might, and I told Mahesh, by the way, I think I told him a day or two ago, interestingly enough, when I was talking to him, that it's bad to be in the business of predictions because you're frequently wrong. And I am frequently wrong. So if I may predict with the caveat that I'm frequently wrong on camera.
We'll play it back for you, Sarvesh. This is being recorded.
I know. So you might be playing back to me in 5 years and say, look how wrong you were, and I would fully accept that responsibility. But having said that, nevertheless, forging ahead, in a foolhardy sense, I think this is accelerating the movement towards the delivery of online classes. And this is not just me, by the way. I mean, you might be interested in knowing my daughter, who now is running around somewhere doing taekwondo. You might hear some screams in a few minutes. Um, her school, which is, she's in second grade now, but schools starting from kindergarten all the way to fifth grade elementary are now conducting a lot of these sessions online, not necessarily learning sessions, full learning sessions, but FaceTime online, some math lectures and math workbooks and writing assignments being assigned online, which she has to then solve on an iPad or a computer and submit back the answers. The teachers sometimes hold in-person conferences with the students and the parents, and we are seeing this come online quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I think we lacked the full tools going into this in pandemic, but I think coming out of the pandemic, I think we might see a lot more of these versatile tools with a lot more facilities being available, which makes your life and mine, right?
Easy.
And that's really the whole point. So what do I feel about this? Well, we were already getting there, at least in the US we were, right? Not in the school level system, but in the universities we definitely were. But I think this is going to just accelerate the push because at this point, I guess most universities are telling the faculty members, you have to look at summer as, we have already gone to an online summer at this point. We have canceled all, I don't think we're going to go any classes on summer, on campus in summer. Fall is a big question mark, right? Fall that is coming around in September, October. And I guess we now have to be prepared to go online. So I think this space is only going to get accelerated. And so this is for university style education, but for training, I think it's uniquely useful for training people. And if I may just imagine the scenario for corporate trainers. Usually corporate trainers would go to a site and do a 2-day workshop or something, a 1 or 2 day workshop or a few hour workshop, and then you fly back. And in those 2 days, everybody's locked in and doing your workshop. Would it be possible now to develop these modules in short bursts and release them before you get to a client site, possibly? Maybe 30-minute sessions, which are much more digestible, where the people who are taking your modules also write back regularly, so you keep track of how they're progressing. And then when you go to a client site, you can have a hybrid model where you use your FaceTime for the most productive experience, right? Do most of the, so it's interesting. Most of the presentations and all can be done online. You don't really have to be in person. It's a waste of time to be in person, honestly, right? It's only the interaction that's more useful.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Direct one-to-one interaction, getting the direct feedback. Then when somebody talks to you, gives you your feedback, then modifying a problem, getting back to them right away. So now you could have a very focused session, very intense one of 2-3 hours, maybe instead of 8-hour session.
Correct.
Use that time and be more productive. And because remember, if everybody does the work that they're supposed to online before they get into the session, the background job is already done. So you're not digesting new material at that point. So the hybrid model shows great promise if I were a corporate trainer, which I'm not, by the way. So you guys know that better. But a completely online model could also work, where you want to cut down the cost radically. You want to get rid of the site visit, but there are lots of companies that have very modest revenues, and they may not have the resources to get corporate trainers in and do the training. A lot of this stuff can then be a market that did not exist. For example, for a very modest amount, you can have a lot of these sessions. They're pre-recorded, so it doesn't cost the recorder, because you're not doing this constantly. You might have a set of recordings that you modify. So it is effective. So it's bringing in new business that you would normally not get in, and the company is getting in training that it would normally think it would not be able to afford. So these are these models that I think will open up, which we don't have right now.
Wonderful, wonderful.
I think this is going to help us make the transition from the
Yes.
classroom model which we have to hopefully a hybrid model very
Yeah, right.
soon.
So Sarvesh, this was really, really interesting. I mean, forget anything else. I think we learned a lot out of this interaction with you.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much. Any closing remarks apart from this you would like to make to all our viewers?
A couple of closing remarks. One relevant to the pandemic: stay safe and stay inside. Right? Can't stress that enough.
Yes.
The second part is all those. Since I'm talking to people primarily in India, right? And I guess my biggest message is that continuous learning thing is super important, right? I mean, we don't realize that. Because I think when I graduated in India, I think I don't know if things have changed now, but um, but the general feeling was once you graduate, you're done. Now that's your entry into a job market, and then you no longer have to look at any book again, which is emphatically not the case, right? Because if you look at the US today, if you did that, you would be out of a job in 1 year, 1 to 2 years, and you would never get a job again. The
Absolutely.
US is one of those classic markets in which job security is non-existent. And that non-existent job security has not been experienced in India today, although it is now coming, right? Multinationals in India might be now rolling out the same policies.
It is.
So all of those who are in India, I'll say, keep yourself relevant by continuously improving your skills, because nobody owes you a job and you will not get one unless you can prove that you can get it. To the employers, I say that nobody owes you sales, that you have to keep yourself relevant by training your employees and instilling in them the understanding that it's in their interest and their as well as not just your employers, but in the employees' interest to learn and keep the company relevant.
Correct. Correct.
So that's the single biggest thing I learned. I mean, I look at myself, right? I came to this country within a few. I was doing a master's. I was enrolled for telecommunications. I came here within a semester. I realized that field was dying, right? I changed my field in one semester. Forget about the courses I took. I moved my field like 180 degrees, right?
Wow.
And then went to computer networking altogether. And now I'm shifting again. Who knows? Tomorrow I might be in medical diagnostics, which I'm now into. Can you imagine? I mean, how much? So when I have these interview questions that people ask, well, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? I always laugh because nobody can tell you, right? Where you'll be 5 years.
That's true.
And that's the only take away from all of this. It's a hackneyed expression. The only constant thing is change, right? The question is, will you be positioned to actually capitalize on that change?
Yeah, so thank you so much, Sarvesh. Very interesting points, very interesting conversation, but well, got to go. And I don't know about where we'll be 5 years from now, but well, I'm hoping a year from now you will be in India, like last year, and it will be great fun catching up with you again. So yeah, and have a great year ahead of you. Give our regards to your family as well, and you stay inside. You stay safe.
Stay safe, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
then.
so
Thank you.
much.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
See you later then.